Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the SANDTON Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
That's it, the SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM and is always available on a podcast if you're on Apple, Google, and Spotify. I'm Alexander Leitner. This is edition 71, week 24 of the SANDTON Times Hour. It's June 2022. And it's great to have you listening. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media @SANDTONTimes. You can visit the website sandtontimes.co.za. And feel free to send through your comments, questions, feedback. Remember, you're part of this conversation. And thank you for making the time to listen as always, wherever you are, whenever you are, because you can either listen to it live, which is probably the best way of listening to it, because then you get to catch all the music. Or if you listen to it delayed, well, then you get all the talk without the music. But wherever you are in the world, even in South Africa, it's good to see more and more listeners from outside of Gauteng joining the SANDTON Times Hour Nation, and I'm happy to report all is well in Sandton land. And I must tell you, we've got such a distinguished group of listeners. Let me congratulate you. You've shown impeccable taste when it comes to your choice of what to listen to. And I'm just going through a couple of the comments I've received over the last week. There's Andre in Randburg who says he's enjoying the show. And then Katie in Morningside who said the interview with the owner of Olives and Plates was great. So thank you for listening and thank you for adding those comments, and all of them are welcome, and it's great to have such a listenership with such great taste and such quality taste. So keep sharing the podcast, keep sharing the radio show, and let's grow this community wider and wider. Well, what's been happening? Well, winter's here. It's gotten unbelievably cold. I don't know about you, but it just feels like you can never stay warm enough. But it's been a busy week. It feels like the economy's been opening up more and more. I mean, I've had a jam-packed week of work. There was a showcase by a tourism authority of Ras Al Khaimah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ras Al Khaimah. I'd never heard of Ras Al Khaimah. But if you've never heard of Ras Al Khaimah, you wonder, where is this? What is this? Go check out the website. I've done a little story on that, and there's more to come, I'm sure. But it was quite an interesting evening, especially when you're discovering something new, something you've never heard before. Then the South African Brandy Foundation had a luncheon, so they showcased a whole bunch of South African brandies. And I must tell you, there's some really nice brandies in South Africa, some of them very underrated. And when we're talking brandy, we're not talking, maybe that sort of bottle that you pull out, for the braai. Like, we're talking about sort of brandies that are the ones that you kind of enjoy, especially when the weather's like this, where you kind of just have a shot or two in a glass and you kind of enjoy it over an extended period of time, and you kind of appreciate the brandy, much like a whiskey. You appreciate it. You don't really drink it. But there's some incredible brandies out there. And I mean, the one that I always refer to, and it's actually one of my favorite bottles, it's a brandy from Takara down in Franschhoek. And they have the most incredible brandy in a beautiful bottle. If you ever get a chance to check that out, go have a look. Then Lefroig, quite sure how you pronounce that. It's also a whiskey from Scotland. They had a fantastic tasting. And let me tell you, the line between a luncheon or a dinner party being a massive success or a massive failure is so thin. And I'm always amazed at how some people get it so spot on, and others just miss the mark completely. And I feel like I had a week like that. But this particular tasting by Lefroig on a cold winter's evening was spectacular. I think they did such an incredible job. I think they put everybody on one big table. They had stories to tell, information to share. It was interactive, really interesting people around the table. I mean, nothing worse than being stuck at a table with people you have nothing to discuss or nothing to share with. And I suppose after lockdown, I don't know about you, but I've become very selective about who you spend time with and how much time you spend with people. There's just no time to waste. There is no time to waste. So this particular dinner was really, really worthwhile. I must say congratulations to the guys there for putting that together. And it was great to find out a little bit more about brands and businesses and what they do. Then another great pasta making class. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those at Old Town Italy. I must say that was quite fun. I enjoy cooking, love cooking. I actually won a trip to Italy, believe it or not, 2 years ago to go spend a week at the University of Gastronomic Science. There's a university dedicated to gastronomic science. It was just before COVID happened, and then the whole world went into a lockdown, into a pandemic, and that trip never happened. And I was quite sad about that, because that would have been quite something to experience, to visit the east of Italy at this university and get to work with some of the best chefs in Italy. So to be able to make some pasta was also pretty fun, and you should check that out. That's quite a fun one to do. And then also, on top of everything else, test driving two of the latest releases by Mercedes-Benz. The one I really, really liked, and I think I'm going to touch on that a little bit later on in the show, but that was a really great drive. But it's a new week, so let's get the show started with a bit of Coldplay.
From Greater Santon to the rest of the world, this is the SANTON Times Hour.
That's right, this is the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM and My Universe. What a great track by Coldplay and BTS to get us into the next 60 minutes. And coming up on this week's episode, he's one of South Africa's respected business leaders at the helm of the South African operation of an American multinational conglomerate, and he's just released a book about leadership and his journey to CEO. That's coming up shortly. Then, one of Santon's well-known boutique hotels is up for sale, and this is a great opportunity to chat about some property and hospitality trends emerging in Greater Santon, but more a bit later. I'll be chatting to the car manufacturer of not 2 or 3, but 5 category wins in this year's Car of the Year Awards. And finally, I chat to our SANTON Times correspondent about some of the super cool launches and experiences she's been attending and that you should go check out. All this and more coming up. But first, let's take a quick look at some headlines for this week. Well, something affecting a lot of us is the story about Comair being liquidated. Comair's business rescue practitioners lodged a court application to convert the business rescue proceedings into liquidation proceedings. So the two airline brands affected, British Airways, operated by Comair, and Kulula.com, unfortunately, despite their best efforts, had been unable to secure the capital required for the airline to recommence operations. Now, it says the company's employees and customers who held bookings or were owed refunds will now become creditors of the company. And this must be hellishly frustrating. I mean, you've booked maybe well in advance, you've made plans, you've hoped for the best, maybe for a holiday or a wedding or a trip, and now you're basically potentially never getting your money back or getting cents in every rand, which is, it's just really disappointing, especially if you were planning this for quite some time. And I believe that they were selling these tickets right up till like the last minute before they announced that everything had ceased. And now this news, I mean, that is just unbelievable. I see Discovery also came out. If you're one of the Discovery clients, you remember you can book, I think, Kulula and BA through the Vitality program. Well, Discovery came out and said any Vitality member who is a Discovery Bank client and booked a discount flight departing from June 1 onwards that has been cancelled due to this issue, Discovery Bank will automatically refund the amount spent on that flight into the Vitality member's Discovery Bank account by close of business on June 10. So if you're one of those people that fall into that particular criteria, well, then you would have possibly gotten a refund, or you would have gotten a refund on your ticket. And then really everybody else, it's a hurry up and wait situation right now. And to think we're now left with Airlink, SAA, FlySafair, and Lyft in South Africa. A couple of years back, I don't know if you remember, we lost Velvet Sky and One Time, who'd been operating for quite some time. And now here we are, sitting, having a conversation about British Airways operated by Comair and Kulula.com, potentially going into aviation history. And I think this is going to seriously affect quite a few routes. I know specifically these sort of not so frequent routes. I mean, we're not talking about sort of Joburg, Cape Town and Joburg, Durban. I think those are sort of the hottest routes. There's probably more secondary routes, which Kulula.com and British Airways service that might now come under a bit of pressure. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Then blue light robbers no more. News 24 reports 3 suspected blue light robbers were killed in a shootout with police and private security guards in Sandton. The suspects are allegedly behind a spate of hijackings and robberies in Greater Sandton and northern Johannesburg, using vehicles fitted with blue lights to disguise themselves as law enforcement officers. And that's also quite scary, to think that you're driving around at night on the highway and suddenly you get flashed by a car that might be unmarked with blue lights, and you think, well, is it, sort of unmarked police? and you pull over only to find that this isn't anyone that is police. It's actually sort of, somebody posing as police. So it's always probably a wise move to drive to your nearest police station first, sort of signal and say, look, I'll meet you at the nearest police station and we'll take it from there. And then you'll find out very quickly if this is the real deal or if this is someone posing as police. Wow, it really just goes from bad to worse. A man shot dead at a coffee shop in Rosebank. So a source told News24 that a man was ordering food at Tasha's restaurant in Rosebank. He had sat down to wait for the order when gunmen approached him and shot him. And also just one of those really bizarre stories. And investigations are underway, and there's certainly more to this story, and that'll probably unfold over the next couple of days as to what the motive and what the story behind that was. But Rosebank, as a district, very open. I mean, you can walk pretty much anywhere and everywhere. I mean, it's quite interesting to see what comes of this. And then maybe just to close off on a more positive story, there's a new development on the cards for Sandton. So Barlow Park is set to become Sandton's brand new residential neighborhood, promising affordable quality housing right on the doorstep of South Africa's commercial capital, Sandton. It's a new property development which will transform the landmark site, which was once the corporate park that housed Barlow World's corporate office, logistics and equipment, into a vibrant, modern, residential-anchored mixed-use neighborhood. You might remember this massive building on the side of the highway. If you drove past Sandton, past Grayston, heading towards Marlborough, it was on the left, and that's now all been flattened, and that is now going to be the site of this new development. But there's more on this story on SANTONTIMES.co.za. Those are some of the headlines for this week. Next up, Nyimpini Mabunda, CEO of General Electric in Southern Africa.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
At SANTON Times.
From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world, this is the Sandton Times Hour.
My next guest needs little introduction, having worked for some of the biggest organizations in their respective sectors, including Procter & Gamble, Nando's, Diageo, and Vodacom in South Africa, the UK, and Uganda. He's recently released a book titled Take Charge, Life Lessons on the Road to CEO. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Nyimpini Mabunda, CEO of General Electric in Southern Africa and chairman of the US South Africa business at the US Chamber of Commerce. I didn't think a man who is as busy as you could find time to pen a book, and I'm quite interested to hear who and what motivated you to write this book.
Yeah, look, thank you, Alex, firstly, for inviting me. The motivation really came from what I see as a potential leadership crisis we have in the country, where we're not having enough young leaders coming through their ranks on succession planning. And I wanted to lend my voice into the development of the next generation leaders, because I think I have some understanding as to why they're struggling to get to the top. There's great raw talent, but they don't have the guidance and the mentorship available at mass. And I think through the book platform, I can share some of my experiences, some of my successes, but also failures, so that the next generation doesn't make the same mistakes. So that was the motivation. I think if you look at the corporates, a lot of them are hiring executives from outside and from outside of their company, rather than promoting from within. We are asking some of the board members to stay longer, even above or beyond retirement age, because we don't have people coming through. And lastly, we are having many people, unfortunately, immigrating post-COVID, leaving the country because now they are globally employable. And therefore, we have a gap in leadership, and I want to close that.
Well, you fast forwarded my questioning almost to the end of my list as I was building up to this. But I think now that you've touched on it, I think it's such an important conversation to have, because many keep referring to this leadership crisis in South Africa, both in the public and private sector. And I'd be quite interested to get your take on it. When we talk about leadership crisis, what are we talking about?
For me, and many people have got their own take on this, I think on the one hand, if you look in the last few years, we've had some significant corporate failures in South Africa. The names are well known out there, and because some of them are in the public domain, I can mention. But when you talk about what's happened with the Tongaat what has happened previously with African Bank, what is happening with Steinhoff, and executives being sued and so on. And you know what's happened also in the public sector as per the state capture report, whether you're talking about some of the issues at SAA, at Transnet, and so on. That is a reflection of leadership. That is a reflection of the type of leadership that we have, which talks about the crisis in governance, the crisis in ethics, the crisis in sustainability. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, when you look at the diversity of that leadership, 20 years after starting to try and get more women involved in leadership in corporates, today, if you look at the listed companies, because they have integrated reports, and you look at the makeup of their leadership, there's barely any women there of significant numbers. I think globally we're still talking about under 10%. So unless you have inclusive leadership where the consumer is already women, half the consumers are women in South Africa, and they are not reflected in business that is there to serve them. And the same as race, as age diversity, as background diversity. So for me, it's a time bomb. Because once you're not inclusive of everybody, you're not sustainable. Once you've got governance issues, you're not sustainable. But on top of that, then you have a net deficit because experienced leaders are leaving the country. They are resigning, they're relocating elsewhere, and you're not replacing them. That is an issue around leadership. So it's diversity, it's shortage because of immigration, but it's also a lack of inclusion.
Well, talking about crises and time bombs, you're quoted as saying that I believe there are many potential senior leaders out there who simply lack the self-belief and toolkit to begin their own journey to the top. And if I may rewind even further back, isn't that really the same or similar crisis that we face at school leaver level? That a lot of young kids coming out of the school system are lacking that self-belief and that toolkit to even start their careers, never mind make it up the ladder.
Yeah, and I think it's in any sphere, including sports or arts and culture, you need to have role models. And the role models come from those who are doing the right things, but also people that you can relate to. So I think as we change the face of leadership and we trying to get more people like women or coming from the townships and so on, wanting to be leaders, if they don't see people like them, nor can they access them for coaching, imparting wisdom, holding their hand, and lifting them up when they fail, then they don't have the confidence, because confidence comes from saying that if she can do it, so can I. If I can do it, so can I. And then you understand the path that someone has traveled, and you realize that actually at some point in their lives, they were exactly where you are today. And that gives you the confidence to say, yes, I can. And that's what I talk about when I mean the guidance, the mentorship, the path, and the support. I don't think because we've got so few leaders who have the time and are accessible, I don't think the up and coming leaders have got that guidance coming through. And I see it even with myself. I get more than 10, 15 requests for coaching and mentorship per day. And I just can't fulfill that because I don't have the time. And that motivated me to write, because through a book, I can reach more people. Yeah. And through platforms like yours, I can reach more people. And thank you again for doing this interview, because that's what we need. We need to drive the conversation. I do a lot of talks in schools, at universities, in expos. We need to get the word out there. But my call is I want more executives like myself to make time and get out there and support and inspire others.
Well, talking about role models, and this is such an incredible coincidence, but I shared a stage with Dr. Royal Khoza last week as he received his Lifetime Achievement Award from CNBC Africa in Sun City. And I see he did your foreword. I mean, that is something quite special.
He's a special man, Dr. Khoza. I did speak to him on Saturday morning and congratulate him on the Lifetime Award. He was supposed to be at my launch later in the day, but there was a clash. I am fortunate to have had him do that. And Dr. Khoza represents a lot of what I would love to be, because he's a role model to me. And I think the key part of that is for someone of his experience and age and his involvement in business, he doesn't have a single scandal. in terms of governance. He's exemplary in terms of ethical leadership, and have written a lot about that. And we lack that sufficiently in South Africa at the moment. So for me, that was the one thing to say. The personal conduct and reputation is very, very important. And of course, you would know that he's the president of the Institute of Directors, meaning that he's impacting a lot more other leaders in terms of governance of companies in South Africa. Now, as an experienced chairperson and an experienced chancellor of various universities, I think is just exemplary of what leaders ought to be. And I'm very honored that he's written it's such a powerful foreword for my book, and he's guided me through writing of this book. And that talks to one principle, Alex, that I really believe in, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Have a board of directors, personal board of directors, people that you can refer to, who can guide you, so that we take their work to another level rather than try and undo what they've done. We must always remember that in everything that we're trying to do, we are standing on shoulders of giants. Let's honor their work and improve on it.
Well, I think it's a valid point to make. I think people always refer to themselves as the CEO of their life. And if you are the CEO of your life, well, then you must have a board of directors that you report into and that hold you accountable and that you can consult to. Business leader and now author Nyimpini Mabunda, his book, Take Charge, Life Lessons on the Road to CEO. It's out now. You can get it at all good bookstores, and I'm sure you can also get it online. I thank you for making the time to chat to us on the SANDTON Times Hour.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, 30 minutes done, 30 minutes to go on the SANDTON Times Hour right here on Mix 93.8 FM and available on Apple, Google and Spotify podcasts. Stay right where you are because there's still a whole lot more on the way right after this.
Back for more?
The SANDTON Times Hour continues.
This is the SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM and One Republic with Kids, and such a great track. And tickets for the upcoming concert in November went on sale last week, and I'm hoping to chat to the group ahead of their tour. Fingers crossed, put in my request, so one can only hope. Well, taking us into the second half of the SANDTON Times Hour, and as always, if there's anything that caught your attention during the show, but you didn't manage to grab the details, you might be driving, you might be sitting in the bath, I don't know, wherever you listen to this to, be sure to visit the show notes on sandtontimes.co.za for a detailed breakdown of everything discussed on the show. And also be sure to check out the social media accounts at SANDTON Times, and feel free to engage. Send a tweet, send a voice note, send me a DM, whatever works for you. And you can use the hashtag SANDTON Times Hour. Now, I was reading an interesting stat this past week that something like 95% of businesses in the hospitality sector have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that, I was interested to hear that this boutique hotel in Sandton called the Marion on Nickel in Hurlingham was coming up for sale. Here to shed some light on the sale and some other interesting property trends is CEO of Galetti Corporate Real Estate, John Jack. And John, tell me a little bit more about this imminent sale of the Marion on Nickel.
It's quite an exciting hotel, actually. I mean, a boutique hotel that was developed circa 15 years ago. And it was one of these hotels which started to challenge the style of hotel in Sandton, put it that way, because it really is quite high end. And the developer had actually bought up all the adjacent stands. So you've got this huge piece of open ground and then a 25-bed boutique hotel next to it. So it kind of gives you an opportunity to either develop out. And at the moment, we've got big demand for what they call apart hotels. So it's not just a typical hotel environment, full service. It's more of an apartment where you can have longer stays. It's kind of less touch, put it that way. And really what happens is there's been a lot of demand, both from an investment perspective, but also just a take up in the market for that sort of easier living, easier style to sort of take on without all the cost that goes along with hotel, as it were. So when this came to market, it had been mothballed 2 years ago. And the developer had really, it's a foreign owner. They just sort of shut shop, pretty similar to what you'd see in the Hyatt and Rosebank, just shut shop for 2 years. And, what ends up happening with, properties like that is, you get a little leak, which turns into a much bigger leak. And then, a tree falls over and, no one kind of sees what happens there. It's a great opportunity coming at great value to the market. And I must say there's been quite a lot of interest in it. So we look to conclude on that transaction in the next couple of weeks.
Well, it's certainly a prime location. I mean, you've touched on some of it. It's just off William Nicol Drive, if you're not too sure where that is, but it's literally a slipway and you're there. And you've mentioned that there's additional property that's also part of this 25-room hotel. It's also, got expansion capabilities. What kind of price are we looking at here? I mean, what's being sort of thrown about in terms of what this property could go for?
Yeah, so we're looking at about 45 million for the property. That includes the 25-bedroom hotel that sits there, and then it's got approximately about another 10,000 square meters of land, 14,000 square meters of land in total, including the hotel. It's got kitchen facilities. It's got an eventing facility down at the bottom. So quite an interesting one, actually. Yeah.
Well, I suppose like much of the rest of the country, Sandton is also coming out of this really weird time where we're still seeing hotels that are closed. I mean, you mentioned the Hyatt in Rosebank. I think the Park Inn is still closed. The Michelangelo is still closed. So there's still quite a few very prominent hotels that are closed. And at the same time, there's been this myriad of new hotels that have opened up at a time where a lot of people would say this is probably the craziest time to try and open any new hotels when you're not quite sure what the demand is going to be. What's your reading of the landscape when it comes to hospitality and hotels in Greater Sandton?
Yeah, I mean, Greater Sandton is an interesting sort of concept, really, because where does it almost end? Sandton, I think, has had a challenge in the way that the infrastructure was developed. Led to very little sort of pedestrian travel. A lot of the pavements you'll see have fallen away, and a lot of the buildings don't face outward from a retail perspective. So you don't often find in Sandton, those cafes opening out into the street, and you don't find that type of environment in Sandton, really. And I think that hasn't done any favors, because people are looking for that type of environment. Certainly in a Melrose Arch, where we sit at the moment, has got a live, work, and play type of environment. You see a lot of people, the pedestrian around here, and a lot of return to the space. It's also safe. And so I think that's one of the challenges Sandton needs to get right. One is security, and the other is to attract that pedestrian. We were talking to Penny Caballeros, who owns the ex-IBM building, and she's got an amazing concept, an amazing retail concept for that property. Right, it's quite close to the new Discovery building, just a little bit further up Oxford Road. An amazing retail concept for that property, and hopefully that type of property comes to market, because it starts to create that different environment. And what we see at the moment is a lot of business meetings are now being held on Zoom, for example. And as a result, that business travel, which is people up and down all the time, has now gone back to Zoom. And so what we're finding the hotels that are doing well are the hotels that almost have like a bit of an Instagrammable element to them. They have, like, if you're going to take the Radisson Red in Interprops development in Rosebank, they've got this really amazing viewing deck up on the top, a rooftop bar. It's got this red pool. It's very sort of trendy and Instagrammable. And you're finding those hotels are starting to attract people to stay over. Very easy service. It's actually a great product by Radisson. And I think that's the type of thing you want, yeah. And we see certainly this Marion Hotel getting into that type of space where you might have something similar to an Element House obviously being in Camps Bay. And it's that type of thing where you create a different environment where people can go somewhere, almost they can be somewhere else, and you don't feel like you're in Sandton as much as directly being in Sandton. You walk out and there's nowhere to really go. You have to call a taxi to go 400 meters. And I think that's kind of what people want.
Well, it's quite interesting what you're touching on in terms of this IBM building potential development. And I think just before the pandemic, Growth Point had announced an ambitious project around the Discovery building as well. There were plans to build sort of an artistic hub with the sort of, like you were saying, coffee shops sprawling out onto squares and opening up the pedestrian space in Sandton quite a bit more. And a lot of these projects and plans obviously went on hold during COVID. And the question was, well, when is it going to come online again? Well, it's quite fascinating how that creative social media appeal could potentially unlock a whole myriad of different business avenues by the sound of things. It's something that I hadn't really thought about. John,
if you look at some of the bidders on the Marriott, they very much have a big social media following. So you'll look at a big investor coming in and partnering with a social media influencer. that's where sort of that capitalism meets that social media influencer market, and that pairing can actually do quite well, because then you're bringing your natural following. You want people to come to the hotel. So it's a very different take on the market. And if you're not getting conferences, and if you're not in a position which just attracts, for example, you're in the waterfront and you're going to get a certain amount of net travel, or you're next to an airport and you get a certain amount of net travel because you got all the service divisions of the airport staying there. It has to have something else that's going to attract the tourist and the traveler.
Yeah. John, you've got a few tips for investors and hoteliers going into the second half of 2022 and beyond when it comes to making hotels attractive for the future?
Yeah. It's interesting. And Guy Stellick of Bond Hotels had actually put out the other day, what is it that people are looking for? It's small things that make it slightly better. And it really is. It's the service that you get in the hotel. But besides for that, it's just a level of comfort that you learn to expect in that hotel. And it's just really, really small touches which make it a different experience. And I think it's those things that people need to pay attention to, or that hoteliers need to pay attention to. But secondly, and I brought it up a couple of times, is what's the Instagrammable experience? What makes it something that people can say, look where I was? Everyone, you see all these posts, all these pictures of people fly business class. The first thing they do is try and post a picture of themselves surreptitiously saying, I'm going on holiday, but you're also saying I'm flying business class. It's the same kind of thing. I'm away from business, but actually look where I'm staying, and that's that, it's something that outside of hospitality, maybe it's something that Growth Point have done very well at the V&A waterfront. It has all these little experiences where you can take a photo, that yellow frame, you can take a photo with a mountain in the background. It's come and feed the seals, or a seal viewing deck, or it's these little things that allow people to have these small experiences that attract more and more people, because you get your own disciples, as it were. They go out and they preach to their friends and to their business colleagues, you've got to go and stay at this hotel. It's got this really cool, and that's what it is. I think that's my personal opinion.
Well, John, I think talking about taking selfies in business class, I think that's called #humblebrag in social media circles. John Jack, CEO of Galetti Corporate Real Estate, thank you so much for making the time to chat to us on the SANDTON Times Hour.
Connect with the SANDTON Times. Email editor@sandtontimes.co.za.
All right, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about the 2022 South African Car of the Year Awards, and we were sitting with the team from the South African Guild of Mobility Journalists, talking about the categories, talking about potential finalists, talking about the methodology, etc., and the results out. And I thought, well, we need to put this to rest. We need to see who were the final winners, and a very impressive lineup. Maybe just to touch on some of them, the mid-size category was won by the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, which I actually have been test driving this past week, and well-deserved. Let me tell you, it was an absolute pleasure to drive, and I think that was a very, very good choice. Also, the Nissan Navara double cab 4x4 category, that was also a well-positioned win. And let me tell you, the Nissan Navara also test drove that a couple of months ago. And it was one of those cars that I've never had so many people stop me and say, wow, that's a really sexy car. Is that yours? So, yeah, two cars that I've driven and that are in the finals. But the one brand that absolutely stood out in this particular year's competition is Toyota. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Clynton Yon. He's the Senior Communications Manager at Toyota South Africa. Clynton, let me kick this off by saying congratulations. This was an absolute conquest of note.
Thanks so much, Alex. We really are chuffed with 5 wins and, of course, the overall Car of the Year title.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through those 5 wins. So you won compact category with the Toyota Urban Cruiser. You won the compact family category with the Corolla Cross. Then you took the new energy category, which sort of speaks to the world of hybrid and all things non-petrol, which is the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid. Then you had the Toyota Land Cruiser 300, which is the adventure SUV category winner. And like you said, the overall winner of Car of the Year. So, I mean, what more do you really want?
Exactly, yeah. You know, the thing that really impressed me about the competition is the fact that we won in categories from quite an affordable model such as the Urban Cruiser right up to Toyota Land Cruiser 300, which is retailing for 2 million Rand plus. So I think it really is testament to the strength of the brand that we can resonate with people over such a broad spectrum, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I mean, and also, and let me be quite honest at this point, I haven't test driven any of these, so I can't really speak from a first-hand perspective. But there's clearly
we'll have to change that.
Well, I mean, it is quite an incredible brand. I mean, the one Toyota that I've spent an incredible amount of time in, it is the Land Cruiser, and it's the specific one that you get at game lodges. And I'm always
it's the 79.
And I'm always amazed at this car. It is like a tank. I mean, what some of these game rangers do with and whatever with this car is just unreal, and it just keeps going. I mean, it goes over hills, it goes down mountains, it goes up mountains, it gets scratched, bruised, bumped, twisted, and that car just keeps going and going. It's just unbelievable.
Yes, it's indestructible.
No, absolutely.
But the Toyota customer is very diverse as well. So you obviously have those traditional type customers who want that sort of rugged reliability. But if we think of the model that's done particularly well in this year's Car of the Year, the Corolla Cross, that is quite a sophisticated little SUV. I say little, but it's not really a little car. It's compact, but it would dwarf a first-generation RAV4, for example. And the fact that it won compact family category with the petrol model as well as the new energy category is really testament to how Toyota has kind of moved with the times.
Yeah.
Because we're living in a world where we're going into an electric era without a doubt. And so hybrid is definitely the stepping stone towards full electric. But in South Africa, it just makes a lot more sense because you don't have the range anxiety, because you need to quickly charge your car. You have the advantage of a petrol engine as well as the electric motor as well.
This unbelievable win by Toyota just reminded me of an interview I did with Will Smith many, many years ago, just ahead of his Oscar nomination for Ali. And he was saying the best part is to be nominated for an award because the expectations are sort of can go either way. But once you've won an Oscar, the expectation is so high on you to now deliver, and people have this very different perception of you. And I almost feel like Toyota might find itself in a very similar position where people are now expecting the world of this brand in terms of 4 different categories. Do you feel the pressure to now have to deliver on all odds and ends?
Oh, that's quite an interesting analogy. Yes, of course there will be pressure to improve and do better next year. But I think for now we're just savouring our victory. Of course, you probably are aware of the fact that our plant in Durban is not operating at the moment.
Yeah, with the floods.
And that is because of the flood situation.
Yeah.
So the Corolla Cross, which has been the instant hit since it launched in November 2021, unfortunately we haven't been able to deliver many models since the 12th of April, which was when our plant operations were suspended. So we're really looking forward to the time when our plant reopens again, hopefully in a couple of weeks, and we'll start production again of Corolla Cross, Hilux, Fortuner, as well as the Sesfakila taxis.
Do you foresee there being a massive demand? I mean, do you see a sort of a halo effect or some sort of direct knock-on to winning a title like this?
That's quite a hard one to quantify because a lot of these models that have won have already been in huge demand. With Toyota Land Cruiser 300, there were waiting lists for about 6 months and beyond. Yeah. Corolla Cross, we were selling on average about 1,800 units since launch, and the demand has been much higher, especially for the hybrid model. So it certainly reinforces that positive impression that people have of certain models, and hopefully we can fulfill the demand.
Well, Clynton Yon, I congratulate you on an epic win. I think this is something that marketing and communications people dream of when you win these kind of titles. And like you say, the demand was already there before the win. Now I'm keen to see what happens after the win, and also, compounded with logistics concerns and an international global shortage of all kinds of bits and bobs. I know COVID-19 also hasn't been very kind to manufacturers across the board. I'm quite keen to see how everything goes for the rest of the year. But for now, like you say, let's savor the award. And I thank you for making the time to chat to us.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, there's Clynton Yon, Senior Communications Manager at Toyota South Africa. We're going to take a quick musical break, and I'll be right back after this.
Follow the SANTON Times on social media.
At SANTON Times.
This is the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM and Ed Sheeran and Bad Habits. Such a catchy tune. We're wrapping up the show, but we've got just enough time to jump into one more conversation, and I'm thrilled to have SANTON Times Correspondent extraordinaire, Makaira Govender, on the line. Makaira, I sent you off to a couple of events on behalf of the SANTON Times to go check it out. And I'm looking forward to some feedback. And I'm going to kick it off with our first event that I sent you off to, which was the artisanal gin sensorium at the Indaba Hotel. What was that like?
Wow, it sounds every bit as good as the name suggests, a gin sensorium. And that is exactly what it was, using all 5 senses to discover gin, learn more about it, including history, the different variants that Flowstone produced. And Flowstone, of course, was the gin that was on selection for the day. But wow, mind-blowing, learned a lot, tasted a lot as well. So super fantastic experience.
So I've seen a couple of pictures. I mean, they literally have like a little gin academy where they have these bottles and cylinders and all kinds of different herbs and spices and liquids. And then you literally have to make your own gin. Is that kind of what it looks like?
Yes, that's correct. So there's different experiences that you can go for. One is actually making your own bottle of gin. The experience I went for was the gin and canapé pairing. And then there's also just your standard gin tasting.
Right. Okay. So if you go for the one that you went for, what do you get?
So basically, this is a 60-minute introductory course to gin pairing. You tasted 4 different types of gin from the Flowstone range, and that was Bush Willow, Marula, and Wild Cucumber.
Wow.
The 4th one was mind-blowing. It was the wildcard tasting, and I think the name is going to throw everyone off. It's called Snuffbox, which was my favorite out of all 4 gins. Basically, get taken through how the whole gin came about. This was done by the gin master, Mark French. Each of the gins were paired with a little canapé. We had a wild cucumber with smoked trout pate, the bush willow with roasted red pepper and halloumi, marula with gouda cumin, and lastly, the snuff box with chocolate brownie. Yeah, really, really, really fascinating. There were little strange fruits placed all over the room, which we later discovered was the actual wild cucumber, which is what gives Flowstone its signature taste. Also got a taste a little bit of this fruit, which literally tasted like freshly cut grass. It was the most insane thing ever.
Now the Indaba Hotel's got this running sort of throughout the year. How much does it cost if somebody wants to go along and do this for themselves?
It's 200 Rand for the 60-minute gin pairing with canapés, 150 Rand just for the 45-minute gin tasting, and then 895 Rand if you want to make your own bottle of gin. That is a full 2-hour-long experience.
Yeah, now I've done the one where you do the entire bottle, the bottle for yourself. And it's actually loads of fun. And what's quite cool is that you get to give it your own name. And it's quite the sort of party conversation when you have people over for dinner and you can say, well, come try my fusion of gin. And if you're not that adventurous, well, I mean, in terms of doing a pairing or a tasting, that sounds really fantastic, Makaira. And then we also sent you off to the Voco Hotel, which opened in Rosebank. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Wow, all I can say is it is in the trendiest hub of Joburg, which is obviously Rosebank. It's a new Voco hotel, which belongs to the IHG group. I'm sure lots of listeners must have heard about the group. It is a British multinational hospitality group with over 6,000 hotels and resorts globally. So this Voco hotel is the first one in Africa. So we're very proud to be showcasing the first of its kind. You're looking at a sophisticated hotel that's trendy, it's quirky, it's fun. It attracts a lot of the young crowd. It really is just something new for the Joburgers to experience.
Well, of the 5,999 hotels you didn't do, let's look at the one you did do, which is the Voco one in Rosebank. And what makes this so different? I mean, Intercontinental Hotel Group, I mean, like you said, is a massive, massive group. How do you start differentiating these hotels?
I think it's just the whole fun vibe when you walk in. The hosts are lively, they're entertaining. Everyone is very willing to help you and recommend amazing things for you to do and see in the hotel. The gym is a completely different experience. You sort of walk through these dark tunnels that are lit up by these neon lights. It does not feel like you're in a gym. If you step outside, you've got rooftop views of Rosebank. I mean, really, I would stay at this hotel just to go to the gym. Their dedicated restaurant is Proud Mary, which I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with and love a lot. Very, very pretty rooms. It's flamingo themed with a bit of navy and gold. So not your average sort of deco that you would expect from your typical hotel.
I think you've kind of given us a bit of a hint as to where to locate it if no one's ever been there. It's sort of in that new part of Rosebank, which is sort of wedged between the Mall of Rosebank, or some people call it the Mull of Rosebank. I don't know if that's still topical. and the Zone. I think that whole building is called the Bank. I think if I remember it correctly. Yeah, some really cool eateries around there. What are the rooms like? Did they get a chance to sleep in the room or look at the room or do anything in the room?
I unfortunately didn't have the pleasure of sleeping in the rooms as yet, but I definitely look forward to it.
Okay, well, noted. And what are people in for a night? I mean, if somebody decides they're going to make a staycation of it or they're visiting Greater Sandton and they want to check out the Voco Hotel, any price points?
Yeah, so you're looking at around roughly 3,000 Rand a night. That's for two people, excluding breakfast.
Well, just based on that, it's going to be one hell of a bed. So we wait in anticipation to see when's the next opportunity to stay there. Makaira, Govender, SANTON Times correspondent. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the SANTON Times Hour. And thanks for updating us on all the latest of what's been happening in and around Greater Sandton.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's it for the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM. And as always, it's available as a podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you want to get in touch with the show, email editor@santontimes.co.za. Don't forget to visit our social media platforms at SANTON Times. And of course, everything we spoke about with Makaira and more in this hour on santontimes.co.za. Feel free to send through your questions and comments and feedback. They're always welcome. And a big thank you to all my guests for this week and as well everyone at the SANTON Times and everyone at Mix 93.8 FM. Thank you for listening and let's connect again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the SANTON Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.